two of the most legendary figures in the annals of war history. Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan stand as icons of unparalleled conquest and military brilliance. But who was the most brutal warrior of them all? These two leaders reshaped the world through their campaigns, leaving behind empires, legacies, and devastation. Today, we'll compare Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan, examining their tactics, their leadership, and the sheer scale of their brutality to determine who truly deserves the title of history's most brutal warrior. Let's begin with Alexander the Great. Born in 356 BCE in the Macedonian kingdom, Alexander was tutored by the philosopher Aristotle and inherited his father's powerful army at the age of 20. Over the next 13 years, he would lead one of the most ambitious military campaigns in history, conquering the Persian Empire and extending his domain from Greece to Egypt and all the way to India. Alexander's brutality was a byproduct of his relentless drive for glory and control. His campaign against Thebes in 335 BCE was an early example of his ruthless approach. When Thebes rebelled against his rule, Alexander razed the city to the ground, slaughtering thousands and selling the survivors into slavery. This act was not just a punishment, it was a warning to other Greek city-states of what would happen if they defied him. One of Alexander's most infamous acts of brutality came after his victory at Tyre in 332 BCE. The city, a critical stronghold of the Persian Empire, resisted him for 7 months. When it finally fell, Alexander executed 2,000 of its defenders by crucifixion and enslaved the remaining population. His actions were designed to strike fear into his enemies, ensuring submission without further resistance. Yet Alexander was not simply a destroyer, he was also a builder. He founded cities, most famously Alexandria in Egypt, and sought to integrate Greek and Persian cultures. His vision of a unified empire tempered his brutality, making him as much a strategist and visionary as a conqueror. His methods, while harsh, often aimed to consolidate his empire rather than purely annihilate. Now, let's turn to Genghis Khan, born Temujin in 1162 on the harsh steppes of Mongolia. Genghis rose from obscurity, uniting warring Mongol tribes into a disciplined and fearsome fighting force. By the time of his death in 1227, Genghis Khan had created the largest contiguous empire in history, stretching from China to Eastern Europe. If Alexander's brutality was calculated, Genghis Khan's was absolute. His campaigns were marked by wholesale slaughter, psychological warfare, and the systematic destruction of cities. One of the most chilling examples was his conquest of the Khwarezmian Empire. After a trade dispute turned violent, Genghis unleashed his wrath, obliterating entire cities like Samarkand and Bukhara. His armies killed millions, leaving entire regions depopulated as a warning to others. Genghis Khan's methods of warfare were innovative and devastating. His use of mobile cavalry and psychological terror made him nearly invincible. He would often allow cities to surrender peacefully, but would show no mercy to those who resisted. In Nishapur, for instance, after the city revolted against Mongol rule, Genghis ordered the execution of every inhabitant, with estimates of the dead reaching over 100,000. But Genghis was not a mindless destroyer. Like Alexander, he had a vision for his empire. He established trade routes, promoted religious tolerance, and enforced laws that united diverse peoples under his rule. His brutality was a means to an end, ensuring the stability and expansion of his empire. However, the scale of his massacres remains unmatched, with some historians attributing up to 40 million deaths to his conquests. When comparing these two titans of history, the question of brutality comes down to scale and intent. Alexander the Great's brutality, though harsh, was often calculated to consolidate power and prevent future rebellions. Genghis Khan's brutality, on the other hand, was on a much larger scale, designed to instill terror and ensure absolute submission. Alexander sought to merge cultures, and build an empire where Greek and local traditions coexisted. His vision was as much about creation as conquest. Genghis Khan, while also a visionary, used destruction as a tool to achieve his goals. His campaigns left a lasting legacy of fear, and entire civilizations were reshaped or obliterated by his hand. In the end, both Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan were brutal in their own ways, reflecting the values and challenges of their times. Alexander's genius lay in his ability to inspire loyalty and create a vision of cultural unity, while Genghis Khan's brilliance was in his ability to harness chaos and turn it into the largest empire the world has ever seen. So, who was the most brutal? It's a question that depends on how you measure brutality. Is it the sheer number of lives lost, or the methods and intent behind the actions? Perhaps the real takeaway is this: both men, in their quest for greatness, demonstrated the heights and the horrors of human ambition.